The Return of the King, a sleepy summary. We left two stories running at the same time, like two rivers flowing toward the same sea, and now they are going to converge, slowly and then all at once, the way that the end of long things always arrives, not like a door slamming shut, but like a tide coming in, quiet and inevitable, touching everything at once and changing the level of the world. One story is Sam, outside a locked gate in the dark, with the ring around his neck and Sting in his hand, and Frodo somewhere on the other side of the wall above the Valley of Morgul, captured and alive and needing to be found. The other story is Pippin, riding through the night on Shadowfax behind Gandalf, going south toward a white city that holds everything that is left of the old world. Both stories are true. Both stories matter. They will meet again at the end, but for now they run separately, and we begin with the one that leads south and into the great last gathering of the world's strength before the darkness. Minas Tirith. The name means the Tower of God, and it is exactly that, a city built with the specific purpose of being the thing that stands between everything west of it and the thing that waits to the east. It sits at the feet of Mount Mindol Luin, a white mountain that rises behind it like the world itself, endorsing the city's claim to permanence. And the city is built on 7 levels cut into the living rock of the mountain's spur, each level higher than the last, each one walled in white stone that has the particular quality of white stone that has been very well made and very carefully maintained over many centuries. The kind of white that does not yellow or gray, but stays pale and clean and faintly luminous even in overcast light, as though the stone remembers what sunlight is and keeps a small amount of it stored. The levels rise in great terraces, each one connected to the next by a gate and a long switchback road, and at the very top, above all of it, the citadel, and in the citadel the white tower of Exelion, rising 500 feet into the sky, slender and almost impossibly tall, and at its top a globe of polished crystal that catches the light on clear days and throws it back across the plain like a signal, like a declaration, like the city saying, "We are still here." At the gate of the first level, the Great Gate, which is iron-bound and set between 2 towers of white stone and opens onto the long road that runs across the Pelennor fields toward the river Anduin and the world beyond. Pippin arrives on Shadowfax before the sun has fully risen, and the gate opens and he rides in. He goes up through the levels of the city, through 6 gates, each one progressively higher and the view from each one progressively more staggering, the plain behind falling away, the river glinting, the distances opening up in every direction. And at the citadel gate there are guards in the livery of Gondor, silver and black, the uniform of a kingdom that has been in a state of quiet emergency long enough that the emergency has become the permanent condition. The guards wear the winged helm. There is a dead tree in a courtyard of white stone, dry and silver-barked, with no leaves, and it has been there for a very long time, and it is a symbol of something, of a line broken and not yet restored, and it is beautiful in the way that dead things can be beautiful when they were once very much alive. Denethor is waiting. Denethor, steward of Gondor, son of Exelion Roman II, father of Boromir and Faramir, is sitting in a great stone chair at the end of a long hall, and he is the kind of person that large stone chairs were designed for, tall and very thin with long hands, and a face of angular, imperious, exhausted intelligence. The face of a man who has been carrying an enormous weight for so long that the weight has become structural, has become part of the architecture of the face itself. His hair is silver, and his eyes are dark and very sharp, and he looks at Pippin, this small, round-faced, travel-stained hobbit, with an expression that is calculating and sad simultaneously, the expression of a man extracting information from a grief he has not yet finished having. Because Pippin carries news of Boromir, who died, who Denethor loved with the specific ferocity of a parent who has selected one child as the repository of all their hope, and who cannot afford to feel the full weight of that loss, and so folds it inward and presses it down, and it becomes something else in him, something harder and more dangerous than grief. Pippin took, Peregrine took in full, is the youngest of the hobbits of the Fellowship, and he is entirely out of his depth in the citadel of Gondor and knows it, and is handling it with the specific resilience of someone who has been out of his depth in several dangerous places over the past several months, and has developed, somewhat against his own nature, a tolerance for it. He is small and round and quick-eyed, with curly brown hair and the kind of face that is constitutionally predisposed toward good humor, and is currently working very hard to maintain appropriate gravity in the presence of the steward of Gondor. He pledges his service to Denethor genuinely, not as strategy, but out of the honest acknowledgement that Boromir died trying to protect him and his companions, and this is the least he can do. Denethor accepts the pledge with a grim courtesy. Pippin is given the uniform of the Tower Guard and assigned duties, and Minas Tirith becomes, for the time being, his city. Gandalf is already looking ahead, past the city, to what is coming. He is always looking ahead. It is both his gift and his burden, the capacity to see the shape of events before they fully arrive, which means he lives, in some sense, perpetually in the moment, just before the worst thing happens, which is not a comfortable place to live. He rides through the city on Shadowfax, who does not fit particularly well in the streets of Minas Tirith, but manages with an aristocratic tolerance for inconvenience. And he talks to Pippin about what is coming, about the forces of Mordor that are already mobilizing, about the allies that might or might not arrive in time, about the importance of the morning, always the morning, the idea that if they can hold until the morning, something may change. What needs to change is the coming of Rohan. Because Theoden has promised, Rohan owes Gondor a very old debt, and Theoden, restored to himself and his kingship after Gandalf broke Saruman's hold on him, has summoned the Rohirrim, every rider who can come, and they are riding south. But they are far away, and the road is long, and the army of Mordor is closer. Back in Rohan, Merry Brandybuck is having a problem. The problem is that Theoden is not going to let him ride to war. Merry is small, he says. The road will be hard. There is no place in the battle line for a hobbit, however brave. Merry accepts this decree with the specific combination of grief and stubbornness that hobbits bring to all prohibitions they intend to circumvent. A rider finds him, or makes a point of finding him, in the dark before the Rohirrim ride out. The rider is in full armor with a helm pulled low, and the voice under the helm is quiet and very certain, and the offer is to bring Merry along, to carry him to the battle, and Merry accepts without asking too many questions because he is cold and lonely and determined, and because some offers feel, in the moment they are made, exactly right. The rider is Iowyn. Iowyn, niece of Theoden, sister of Eomer, is one of the most important people in this story, and one of the people the story has been quietly building toward. Iowyn, when we first meet her properly, is in the Golden Hall of Meduseld, and she looks like someone who has been asked to wait in a room for a very long time and has decided to be very still and very composed, and to not let anyone see what waiting like that costs. She is tall for a woman of Rohan, with long pale golden hair and grey eyes that have a quality in them that is not coldness, but is something that has learned to look like coldness as a matter of self-preservation. She is the kind of beautiful that is inseparable from the quality of holding herself apart, a reserve that is not aloofness but protection, the protection of someone who has lived in a court for years, managing the care of a diminished king while her own life contracted around her, who has spent too long in close spaces doing necessary thankless things while the men rode out and came back with stories. She wants to ride. She wants to fight. She has been trained to fight, is in fact extremely good at it, and has been told repeatedly in the language of kindness and in the language of practicality that there is no place for her in the battle, which is exactly what they are now telling Merry. She dresses as a rider of Rohan, and she rides, disguised, at the back of the host, with Merry hidden in front of her saddle, and nobody notices, or nobody who notices says anything, and the army of Rohan rides south in the dark. Now back in Minas Tirith, the fires, the beacons, the mountain peaks of the White Mountains carry, on their highest points, great beacons, piles of wood and oil, tended by small garrisons who have had no other purpose for years than to be ready to watch the peak to the east, and when that peak blazes, to light their own. It is a signal chain running from Gondor to Rohan, stretching across the whole range of mountains, one light answering another, and the night that the first beacon is lit, it goes like dominoes of fire, peak to peak, west to west, and in the hills of Rohan someone looks east and sees the farthest mountain burning and shouts, and the chain reaches Theoden, and Theoden says, "Rohan will answer." The beacons being lit is one of those moments in the story that is not complicated. It is simply beautiful, and it means what it means, which is that some things still work, that the old agreements hold, that when one part of the world calls out in the night, another part answers. The siege of Minas Tirith begins. The armies of Mordor, enormous, dark, ranked in numbers that make counting feel absurd, cross the Anduin and spread across the Pelennor fields, and the city closes its gates and waits. The Pelennor is the great flat plain that surrounds the city, farmland and villages, and the remains of an outer wall called the Ram Mas Ekkor that is breached early and thoroughly, and the host of Mordor camps on the plain in numbers that make the ground dark with them for as far as can be seen. There are siege engines that throw fire. There are Nazgûl circling overhead on winged creatures that are not dragons but are very large and very horrible, leathery and swift, and their presence in the air above the battle is a kind of psychological weapon as much as a physical one, because the sound of them freezes people, the way that certain sounds make the body seize up before the mind can intervene. The city is bombarded. The lower levels are burning. The great gate holds for a while, and then the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King, rides forward with a device of great power, and the gate shatters, and he rides through the broken gate into the first level of the city, and there is a moment where it seems like this is it. This is the end. The city falls tonight. And then the horns of Rohan, they come with the dawn. They come out of the north, on the far side of the city, sweeping down onto the Pelennor fields in the morning light, thousands of riders, a great thundering wave of horses and spears, and the deep-voiced horns of Rohan. And the sound of them is one of the sounds that the story has been building toward. A sound that means something has turned, that the morning came after all, that Gandalf was right. Theoden is at their head, mounted on his great horse Snowmane, and the Rohirrim crash into the flank of the Mordor army like the end of an argument. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields is very large and very complicated and very terrible, as battles of that scale tend to be, and in the middle of it Theoden's horse is struck down by the winged Nazgul mount and falls, and the king is pinned beneath, and the Lord of the Nazgul comes to finish the king. He is the Witch King of Angmar, the greatest of the nine, and there is a prophecy about him, an old prophecy, which says that no man of women born shall slay him, and he knows this prophecy, and it makes him in this moment unafraid. He stands over the fallen king and regards the rider who steps between them with the contempt of something ancient and terrible that has faced many things and been afraid of none of them. The rider takes off the helm. Iowin says, "I am no man." She says it without drama and without hesitation, and the moment of the Witch King's pause, the moment where the prophecy rearranges itself, where the thing he believed to be his protection reveals itself to be the precondition for his ending, is the moment Merry, behind him, drives his barrow blade into the back of his knee. The barrow blade is made of ancient craft, from the Barrow Downs, made specifically for war against the servants of the Shadow, and it does what it was made to do, and Iowin drives her sword through the Witch King's helm, and he screams, a sound that tears the air, and he is gone, and the greatest of the Ringwraiths is destroyed. Iowin falls, Merry falls. They are both poisoned by the darkness of what they touched, both struck by the shadow that clings to anything that was close to the Witch King in his ending, a sickness called the Black Shadow, which is like despair made physical, cold, working inward from the wound. And Theoden is dying. He is pinned under his horse, which is dead, and his body is broken, and he knows it, and he says what he wants to say, which is that he is going to join the great feast of his ancestors, and that he is not afraid, and there is Merry beside him, Merry the Small, Merry his esquire who was not supposed to be here and who came anyway, and Theoden calls him dear to him and means it, and then he is gone. Theoden King, the Lord of the Mark, has ridden to his last battle and come through it and out the other side of it, and the plain of the Pelennor is his funeral field, which is a great and terrible honor, and the Rohirrim will sing about it for as long as there are Rohirrim to sing. The battle is not over when Theoden dies. The battle is in fact at one of its worst points, because there are armies from the south that have come up the river on dark ships, sailing under black sails into the quay at the south end of the field, and the hearts of the defenders fail when they see the sails, because those ships were supposed to carry allies and they are carrying enemies, the corsairs of Umbar, and it is too much. The math is wrong again, and the armies of Gondor and Rohan on the plain are very nearly overwhelmed. The ships dock. And out of them comes Aragorn. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, has been on a different road entirely. While the main story moved to Minas Tirith, Aragorn took a road that nobody who was not directly descended from the kings of old could take, because the road goes through the paths of the dead. The paths of the dead are exactly what they sound like. There is a door in the side of a mountain in the White Mountains called the Dark Door, and behind it a tunnel, and in the tunnel the dead wait, an army of the dead, oath-breakers, men who swore to answer the call of the king of Gondor in the last alliance long ago, and who did not answer, who broke their oath, and who were cursed by the last king, Isildur's heir, to have no rest until the oath was kept. They have been in the mountain for 3,000 years, restless, grey, terrible, and the tunnel that leads to them is the kind of place that even very brave people do not go voluntarily, a place where the air is thick and cold, and the feeling of dread is physical, and where the dead move in the dark at the edge of vision and make sounds that are not sounds, and where the horses need to be held by main force and still barely hold. Aragorn is Isildur's heir. He is the one they have been waiting for, the one who can release them if they answer the call. He goes into the mountain. He goes into it in the dark with a dwarf who is very frightened and an elf who is less frightened, but who is made of different material, and his companions of the Grey Company, rangers from the north who followed him south, and he calls the dead, and they answer. The Grey Company, the rangers of the north, are lean and dark-cloaked and quiet, men of long lineage who have been wandering the empty lands of the north for generations, keeping a watch over things that most of the world no longer knows needs watching. They followed Aragorn south because he is their lord, their king, though neither title has been spoken aloud in the official sense for a very long time, and their faces when they look at him have the look of people who have been waiting for something to begin that has not yet begun, and they are ready. They are always ready. Readiness, for the Rangers, is the permanent state. Aragorn brings the dead out of the mountain and takes them south, sweeping through the coastal lands, and the Corsair fleet on the Anduin is overwhelmed by grey terror moving over the water, and the Corsairs flee or surrender, and Aragorn takes the ships and fills them with men of the southern coastlands who have been waiting for exactly the right banner to appear before they would fight. And the right banner is the one Arwen made, the standard of Aragorn, which is black with the white tree of Gondor and 7 stars. And it goes up on the ship as they sail north, and when the ships arrive at the Pelennor, the dead have done their part and are released, and Aragorn releases them, and they go at last to whatever rest Oathbreakers can find after 3,000 years of waiting, and then Aragorn steps off the ship onto the field of battle, and the battle turns again. Faramir has been wounded. Before all this, before the battle, Faramir rode out on a desperate rearguard mission to cover the retreat of the forces of Gondor from the outer wall, and he was struck by one of the Black Rider's arrows as he rode back, and the shadow took him, and he lies in the houses of healing on the 6th level of the city, grey and cold and not waking. Several others lie there too, Iowin, cold and still, her sword arm stiff, Mary small and grey-faced, the hand that held the barrow blade numb and cold. The houses of healing are in better times, a place of rest and medicine, a series of long, low buildings with gardens attached, on one of the upper terraces of Minas Tirith, smelling of herbs and clean linen, tended by healers who know a great deal about medicine and who are on this particular day overwhelmed and frightened and doing their absolute best, which is good but which is not enough, because what lies over these patients is the black shadow. And the black shadow does not respond to ordinary medicine. There is an old saying in Gondor, the hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and the herb called athelas or kingsfill, which the healers have, but which they consider at most a pleasant-smelling herb of minor use, becomes something else entirely when the hands that prepare it are the right hands, when the right voice says the right word over the bruised leaves, when the king's breath passes over the steam. The smell of it, when Aragorn uses it, is not the mild, pleasant smell that the healers know. It is the smell of rain in the mountains and the sea at a great distance, and something that has no name, but that means very specifically, hold on, morning is coming, you are not lost yet. Aragorn goes from bed to bed. He calls Faramir back from the shadow, and Faramir opens his eyes and looks up at him and says, with the wondering recognition of someone who has just returned from a long way away and is not sure yet what he has returned to, my lord, you called me. And Aragorn says, it is not my call, but the hour is not yet come. And Faramir believes him. Faramir would believe Aragorn on the evidence of this moment alone, and in fact does, and from this moment forward there is between them the kind of allegiance that is not commanded but given freely, which is always the strongest kind. He calls Iowyn back. She is harder to call, because there is something in Iowyn beyond the physical wound that does not want to come back, something that has been waiting to end for a long time, a grief that is not quite the black shadow but has made a space for it. And Aragorn calls her back anyway with honesty and with the specific kind of tenderness that good healers practice, the tenderness of someone who is not going to tell you things are fine, but is going to stay with you while they aren't. He calls Merry back, and Merry comes back quickly, the way that hobbits come back from things, with a resilience that is not toughness exactly, but more like the cellular memory of comfort, the deep physical knowledge that there is a world in which things are warm and the food is good, and the people you love are nearby, and that world is worth returning to. The city has held. The battle is won. The king has returned, but the war is not over. The war is not over because the ring still exists, and Sauron still exists, and Mordor is still there, and the only way this ends is with the ring in the fire, and the ring is with Frodo, and nobody in Minas Tirith knows where Frodo is, and more importantly Sauron does not know either, because if he knew the ring was in the hands of a hobbit walking toward Mount Doom, he would simply, with his full attention, stop it. The eye is not looking at the right place. It can be made to keep not looking at the right place, but that requires something very dangerous, a gamble so severe that most sane people would call it a suicide mission rather than a strategy. Aragorn looks into the Palantir. The Palantir that Pippin found at Isengard, the one that Saruman was using to communicate with Sauron, the one that revealed the ring's location when Pippin looked into it by accident. Aragorn looks into it deliberately, which is the difference between falling into a river and deciding to swim across one. Both involve the same water, but one involves agency. And agency, in this case, is the only thing that makes it survivable. He reveals himself to Sauron. He shows Sauron Andúril, the flame of the West, the reforged blade of Elendil, the sword of the heir of Isildur. He says, in effect, by showing this, I am here, look at me, the heir of your old enemy is here with his army and his sword and his intention to come to your gate. This is what he wants Sauron to see. This is the gambit. Make Sauron look west, at Aragorn, at the army that is marching toward the Black Gate. Make the eye believe that Aragorn has the ring and is going to try to use it against Sauron, which is exactly the kind of move that Sauron would consider, because Sauron understands power and the desire to use it, and cannot imagine that anyone would carry the ring toward Mordor in order to destroy it rather than to wield it. The eye will look west. The eye will look at the host of the west marching toward the Moran Non. And the eye will not look east toward a narrow pass, toward two small figures moving very slowly through the slag heaps on the inner slopes of the mountain range that rings Mordor. The host of the west is not large enough to win the battle it is going to fight. Everyone knows this. They march anyway because the battle is not the point. The battle is the distraction. The point is 2 miles to the east and above them, where Frodo is, if Frodo is still alive, if Frodo still has the ring, if everything has not already gone wrong in ways they do not yet know about. Merry cannot come. His arm is still weak, his sword arm, the hand that held the barrow blade, and the healers will not pass him. Pippin goes. Pippin goes in the livery of the Tower Guard, small and fierce, and wearing a helm that is slightly too large, and carrying a sword that is the right size. And he goes because he is a soldier of Gondor now, sworn, and because he is Pippin, and Pippin has a very limited ability to stay behind when things are happening. The road east. The road to the Moran Non, the Black Gate, goes through the ruins of Ithilien, past the crossroads where the old king's statue stands with a crown of fresh flowers someone put there despite everything, or because of everything, the flowers impossibly white in the grey light. Past the statue and east, and the land changes, and the sky changes, and the air changes, and by the time they are close to the Moran Non, the ground is ash and broken stone, and the sky above Mordor is a permanent bruise of cloud and smoke, and the mountain far in the distance, O Rodruin, Mount Doom, is throwing red light up into the underside of the clouds. They halt before the gate. Gandalf rides forward as herald and calls to the gate, and the gate opens, and an emissary comes out, the lieutenant of Barad-dûr, the mouth of Sauron. He is a man, or was once, one of those who went over long ago and have been in the service of the darkness for so long that they have been shaped by it, and his face, under his black helm, is something you would not want to look at for very long. He shows them things that were taken from a captured prisoner, a mithril coat, and other items, and implies that the prisoner is being questioned, that he will be questioned further, that the Dark Lord wishes to negotiate. He is trying to make them believe that Frodo is captured, that the ring is taken, that everything is over, and for one terrible moment it works, the way terrible truths work, the way that your body believes the worst possibility before your mind can evaluate it. Gandalf takes the things and dismisses the emissary and turns back to the host, and his face is sad but resolved. And the gate opens fully, and the armies of Mordor pour out, and the host of the West, outnumbered absurdly, forms up and holds its ground, not because they believe they can win, but because what is needed is for the eye to look at them for as long as possible. And if they run, the eye stops looking and turns east, and east is where everything depends. Now let us go east. Let us go back several days, back to Sam, standing outside the gate of Cirith Ungol in the dark, with the ring around his neck. The Tower of Cirith Ungol is a watchtower built by Gondor long ago to guard the pass, and it has been occupied by orcs for many generations, and it is not a pleasant place. It has a main gate and inner courts and high walls with guards, and it is built into the side of the mountain above the pass, and getting into it uninvited requires either very good luck or very specific kinds of help. Sam has the phial of Galadriel, he has Sting. He has the ring, which he takes off his finger after a moment, because he is practical, and the ring, he is aware, makes you invisible, but does not make you silent or careful, and the gate requires something else first. There are statues at the gate, great stone figures with the heads of watchers, and they are not merely decorative, they see. They are some craft of Mordor, ancient and attentive, and the phial of Galadriel, when Sam holds it up before them, silences them, drives them back, and the gate is open. Inside the tower, the orcs are in the process of killing each other. There are two factions of orcs in Cirith Ungol, tower orcs and orc soldiers from Morgul, and they have been in dispute since the moment Frodo was brought in, the dispute being over ownership of the Mithril coat, and the dispute has escalated in the way that orc disputes tend to escalate, which is quickly and fatally. When Sam gets in, there are very few orcs left standing, which is the specific piece of luck that is in fact not luck at all, but the long consequence of Sauron keeping creatures that hate each other in proximity under the assumption that the controlling force of his will prevents the obvious outcome, and the controlling force of his will is currently very occupied looking west at a small army by the Black Gate. Sam finds Frodo at the top of the tower in a high cell, and Frodo is alive. He has been stripped of everything, cloak, pack, the mithril coat, Sting, and he has been questioned. But orcs do not know what they have, not really, because if they did, the questioning would have been done differently and by someone else. And Frodo is alive and himself, if deeply shaken and very cold, and Sam puts the ring back around his neck, and he is Frodo again, the particular weight of the thing settling into its familiar, unbearable position. There is a moment in this reunion that is not heroic. It is just two hobbits, in an orc-stinking high room in a terrible tower, holding on to each other in the dark. And it is one of the most important moments in the story, because this is what the whole enormous machinery of the quest comes down to in the end. Not the armies, not the kings, not the wizards, but these two choosing to keep going when there is nothing left to keep going on except the choice itself. They get out of the tower. They find orc gear and dress themselves in it. Ugly, iron-shod, foul-smelling, uncomfortable orc gear that fits badly and chafes and is deeply unpleasant to wear, and they slip out through the gate and onto the road that leads down into Mordor. Mordor. The interior of Mordor is a landscape that seems specifically designed to demonstrate what a land looks like when it has been used as a base of operations for evil for several ages of the world, without any particular attention to the aesthetics of the result. It is flat and grey and ash-covered in the wide plain called the Plateau of Gorgoroth, a plain that stretches between the mountain ranges and Mount Doom, and the mountain is always visible, always erupting slightly, red and smouldering on the horizon. The smoke from it combining with the general cloud cover over Mordor to produce a permanent twilight in which the only light is the orange glow of the mountain and the occasional orc fire. The ground is broken and ashy, covered in rubble, crossed by roads of black stone along which armies march, and the air smells of sulphur and old fires and dust, and it is not a place that supports the body's desire to continue. There is also very little water, and what water there is not good. And Frodo and Sam are hobbits of the Shire, creatures evolved specifically for good earth and good air and more food than is strictly necessary. And this environment is about as hostile to them as an environment can be while still technically containing breathable air. They also, unfortunately, still have company. Gollum found them again. He followed them from Shelob's lair. He followed them through the orc roads, and he shadows them now at a distance, with the patient persistence of something that has no home but the pursuit of the ring, and Sam knows he is there and watches, and Frodo knows too but does not say much, because the ring is doing more to Frodo now than it was doing even a week ago, the weight of it increasing as they move toward the mountain, because the ring is moving toward the fire. And the ring does not want to move toward the fire, and the ring's refusal is communicated through Frodo in the way that the ring communicates, which is not by speaking, but by being unbearably heavy, by making the thought of stopping feel like relief, by making the thought of turning around feel like sense. They walk across Gorgoroth. They walk for days. They drink the last of their water and eat the last of their lembas bread, eating less than they should because the lembas is almost gone, one crumb more sustaining than it has any right to be, and they walk. The road is harder than anything, harder than the dead marshes or the climb over the Emin Muil or any of it, because the land itself opposes them in a way that is not supernatural exactly, but is the accumulated wrongness of Mordor wearing down the body's confidence that it can persist. Sam is carrying most of the weight now, both their packs, because Frodo cannot, and then Sam is carrying Frodo at the last on the slope of the mountain when Frodo's legs give out, and he will not go further because the mountain takes everything and asks for more. Sam carries him, not far, not up the whole mountain, but enough. Sam Gamgee, gardener of Bag End, son of Hamfast the Gaffer, who came on this journey because his master was going, and the idea of Frodo going alone was simply not a thing Sam was willing to let be true. Sam carries Frodo up the side of Mount Doom, which is by any measure the most unlikely act of heroism in the story, and therefore also the most important one, the Crack of Doom. The entrance to the mountain's interior is a cleft in the western face, the Samath Nor, a tunnel that leads to a chamber above the fire, and the fire below the grating in the floor of that chamber is the fire in which the ring was made, the only fire hot enough, the only fire that means anything to it. They get to the door, and Gollum attacks. Gollum, who has followed them all the way across Gorgoroth, who has been waiting, who has been wanting the ring since the moment Frodo took him as a guide, and longer than that. Since the moment Bilbo walked away from the cave under the Misty Mountains 60 years ago and took the ring with him, Gollum attacks, and they fight on the threshold of the mountain in the orange light and the sulphur smell, and Gollum bites off Frodo's finger to get the ring. He gets it. He has it. He dances with it on the edge of the fissure above the fire, the ring on his finger, his whole being concentrated into this one moment of having the thing that defines him, and his face is the face of something that has waited a very long time to be complete, and it is complete, and then he is over the edge. He falls into the fire. The ring falls into the fire, and the mountain explodes. The eye of Sauron, turned west toward the host of the West at the Black Gate, turns suddenly. It turns with the horrible speed of a thing that has just understood something crucial, that it cannot stop. It turns toward the mountain, and what it sees there, the last sight of it, is the ring in the fire, which is also the last sight of itself, and the eye goes out like a light blown out by wind, and the tower of Barad-dûr, Sauron's fortress, collapses, the great dark towers falling inward and the shadow on the plain of Gorgoroth dispersing, and the armies of Mordor, suddenly without the will that drove them, fall into confusion, fleeing, surrendering, losing all coherence. And at the Black Gate the armies of the West watch Mordor destroy itself and understand slowly what happened. Gandalf understands first. Gandalf always understands first. He sends the great eagles. The eagles have come from the north, led by Gwaihir the Windlord, who rescued him from Orthanc, enormous and golden in the ash-filled air. He sends them east, into the ruin of Mordor, toward the mountain that is destroying itself. Sam and Frodo are on the slopes of Mount Doom, and the mountain is erupting and the ground is breaking apart, and they are lying on a rock that is getting smaller as the lava rises around it, and there is nothing left to do. The quest is complete. The ring is gone. The enemy is destroyed. And they are going to die on this rock in the middle of a volcanic eruption, which is, all things considered, not a bad place to end up if you were going to end. And they hold on to each other and look out at the ruin of a Dark Lord's world, and Frodo, perhaps for the first time since Rivendell, is just himself, not Frodo the ring-bearer, not Frodo the carrier of something enormous, just a hobbit from the Shire who is very tired and very glad, in this last moment, to have Sam next to him. The eagles come. Gwaihir the Windlord swoops down through the smoke and the fire and the ash and takes them up, both of them, and carries them west, away from the ruin into clean air, and they both fall unconscious, which is the body's way of saying, "That was enough, you can stop now." They wake in Ithilien, in a green and good place, in the land that was once the Garden of Gondor, and Gandalf is there, and Gandalf is laughing, which is something he does not do enough. And then the other members of the Fellowship are there, Pippin and Merry, and Legolas and Gimli, and the reunion is not complicated. It is just the specific gladness of finding that the people you were afraid were dead are not dead, which is one of the best feelings there is, experienced more rarely than it should be and valued more highly, because of that rarity every single time. Frodo's finger is bandaged. He is thin and exhausted in the way of someone who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has just put it down, and the lightness of not carrying it has its own dizziness to it, its own strangeness, the world feeling different now that the weight is gone. Sam is round-faced and sunburned and missing nothing. There are celebrations, many celebrations. The kind of celebrations that a world has when something enormous and dark that has been growing in it for a very long time is suddenly, actually, finally gone. And the feeling of it being gone is a feeling that takes a while to arrive in the body, because the body has been braced for so long that it does not immediately know how to unclench. The greatest celebration is in Minas Tirith, on the field of Cormal Len, and then in the city itself. Aragorn is crowned. He is crowned in the ruins of the upper courtyard of the citadel by Gandalf, because Gandalf is the one whose authority reaches deep enough to confer what is being conferred, and the crown of Gondor is placed on the head of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the long-awaited king, the returned heir of Isildur, and the people of Gondor and the people of Rohan and all the assembled allies of the host of the West call out his name and other names. The old names, Ilessa, Envinyata, the Rhythmic. And the sound of it comes up off the fields and the white city and the mountains, and it sounds like the world recognizing something that has been true for a long time and is now being said aloud for the first time. Before the coronation, he goes to the slopes of Mount Mindol Luin with Gandalf and finds there, in a snowfield, a sapling, a small, impossibly young sapling of the white tree of Gondor, which should not be there, which has no business being there, because the white tree is very old, and the last of its line died before Aragorn was born. But there it is, small and very white and surrounded by snow and clearly alive. He plants it in the court of the fountain where the dead tree stood, and the dead tree is removed with full ceremony and buried with honor, and the new tree is planted, and it grows, because that is what things that were planted by hands that knew what they were doing tend to do. And Arwen comes. Arwen Undomiel, the daughter of Elrond, who is half-elven and who has chosen, for Aragorn, to be mortal, a choice she made knowing exactly what it means and making it anyway, with the full weight of her considerable intelligence and her several thousand years of perspective brought to bear on the decision. Arwen comes with her father from Rivendell, and she is described only in terms that fall apart slightly in the attempt. Because there are some things that prose knows it cannot adequately convey and is honest about the limitation. Very beautiful, very still, with dark hair and the twilight about her, like the evening star. She and Aragorn are married in the city of Minas Tirith, and the chapter of waiting that was their love story closes quietly and finally, and they begin the next chapter, which is longer and better, and which the story only touches lightly because some things are private. Faramir marries Iowyn. This is mentioned alongside everything else, but it is worth pausing on for a moment, because Faramir and Iowyn find each other in the houses of healing, during the long days when the battle was happening elsewhere, and they were both recovering from shadows, both leaning against the wall of the garden looking east toward the war, both people who have come from specific and painful circumstances into a moment of suspended clarity, and they talk, and they are, it turns out, people who understand each other very well, two people who have been defined by things outside themselves, duty, expectation, the shadow of someone else's preference, and who are, in this quiet interlude, finding what they actually are without all of that. Faramir sees Iowyn clearly and loves what he sees. Iowyn sees Faramir clearly and loves what she sees. It is as simple as that, and the story says so in a few careful, warm sentences, which is the right amount for something that is real. Now the long road home, the fellowship, or the remnants of it, the living ones, minus Boromir who died and Gandalf, who is not quite the same thing he was at the beginning, travel north from Minas Tirith, through Ithilien, to Isengard, to Rivendell, disassembling in stages as each member peels off toward the place they belong. Legolas and Gimli ride east and west and together, because their friendship, which was impossible at the beginning, is by now one of the truest things in the world. A dwarf and an elf who found in each other something that the long enmity of their peoples had prevented for generations, and who intend to go on finding it for as long as there is world to travel. Legolas is going to see the sea eventually, which will do something to him that it does to all elves who hear it, a longing that does not leave, but that is later. Gimli is going back to the glittering caves, which he has been dreaming about since he saw them in the Battle of Helm's Deep, and he will make something of them that reflects what they actually are rather than what war made them. At Isengard, or what remains of Isengard, which is the flooded ruin with only the indestructible Orthanc still standing, they find Saruman again. Saruman is leaving. He is small now, not physically smaller, but diminished in some way that is not physical, the greatness in him gone, the possibility of it gone, and what is left is a bitter, brilliant, mean old person who has lost everything he valued and has converted the loss into something he can carry, which is contempt. He and Grima are on the road with a cart and a small company, going north, going away, and Theoden's funeral procession crosses their path. And there is a terrible exchange in which Saruman, with the last reliable tool he has, his voice and his cruelty and his intelligence, says what will hurt most to the people present. And it works, because he still has that, still has the ability to find the wound and press it. But he is not powerful enough anymore to do anything more than press it. And they let him go because he is finished, and being finished is punishment enough, or should be. They come to Rivendell. Elrond is still there, and Arwen has gone, and the quality of Rivendell without Arwen in it is the quality of a beautiful place from which the most essential thing has departed, still beautiful, still careful, but differently so. Bilbo is there. Bilbo is very old now, truly old, 130 and some, and the oldness is real now. The age that was suspended by the ring finally arrived in full, because the ring is gone, and with it the peculiar immunity it granted him, and he is very small and very frail and very happy, in the simple, uncomplicated way of extremely old people who have come to terms with things and set down most of the complications they used to carry. He falls asleep regularly in the middle of sentences. He has been working on his memoirs for years, and they are very nearly done. He is going to the Grey Havens. He is going west, across the sea, to the Undying Lands, which is where elves go when they leave Middle-earth. And Elrond is going too, and Galadriel and Celeborn, and several others of the great elves of the age now departing. Because the third age of Middle-earth is over, the age of elves and the great contests between the servants of light and darkness is concluding. And the fourth age, the age of men, is beginning, and the elves are going home, going west. Going to the place that has always been waiting for them at the end of the long story of their time here. The four hobbits ride west from Rivendell to the Grey Havens, and Gandalf is with them. The Grey Havens is a harbour, the harbour at the end of the world, where the ships are built that cross the sea to the undying lands, a harbour that is ancient and quiet and smells of salt, the smell of deep water and something beyond it, the smell of wherever the ships go when they pass the horizon and do not come back. Círdan the shipwright tends the harbour, and he is the oldest thing in Middle-earth that walks and talks and makes decisions, white-bearded and very still, with the eyes of someone who has been watching ships depart for longer than most things have existed. Frodo is going with them. This was the gift offered to him, because he bore the ring, because of what he carried and what it cost him. He is given passage to the west, to healing, to rest. Not all wounds can be healed in Middle-earth, and Frodo's wound, the wound in his shoulder from the Morgul blade that troubles him on its anniversary, and the deeper wound that has no specific location, but that the ring left in him, the missing weight of it, the sense of being diminished that comes from having been the carrier of something enormous. These will not heal here. He is going somewhere they can, and Sam cannot come, not yet. This is the hardest thing in the story, harder even than Mordor, because in Mordor the hardest things were clear. There was the ring, and there was the fire, and the path between them was terrible, but it was a path. This is not a path. This is two people who have been through everything together arriving at the place where the road divides, and one of them is going somewhere the other cannot follow, not yet, not for a long time. Frodo says what he needs to say to Sam. He gives him the Red Book, Bilbo's memoirs and Frodo's additions, the history of the whole adventure from the beginning, there and back again, and further back again, and all the way to the fire and home. He gives it to Sam because Sam is going to continue and needs the record of what was, and because putting something into words is one of the ways that we keep it, which both of them know. The ships sail at evening. The light is golden on the water. Gandalf is there, and Bilbo, small and sleeping in his chair, half dreaming already, and Galadriel and Elrond and several others. The ship is white and tall, and the sail catches the light, and it goes quietly and steadily and without looking back, because looking back is for those who are staying, and those who are leaving are going somewhere that has no need for it. Sam watches it go. Merry and Pippin are there too, and they watch it go together until it is a white point on the horizon, and then it is not there at all, and the sea is empty, and the air smells of salt and evening. Merry and Pippin, who have grown, literally grown, from drinking the water of Fangorn, who are now noticeably taller and more solid than they were when they left, who have been to war and back, and who carry that in them in ways that are not visible from the outside, but that change how they move through the world. They go back to Buckland and Tuckborough respectively, and they are gentlemen adventurers of the Shire, which is a category that the Shire previously did not have, and which fits them extremely well. They are known, they are respected. They bring with them a largeness of experience that the Shire, comfortable and small, recognizes as different without entirely knowing why. And this differentness is not a burden but a richness, a permanent awareness that the world is much larger than the nearest hill. But before all of that, before the coming home that is peaceful, the coming home that follows the coming home that was not peaceful, because the Shire was taken while they were away, occupied by Saruman and Grima and a collection of unpleasant men. and the hobbits clear it out with an efficiency that surprises everyone except Aragorn, who said they would be fine, that he had been watching them for a long time, and they had grown into something formidable without noticing. Before the good coming home. There was the scouring of the Shire, which is the last piece of the story that needed to happen, and which Tolkien put in because he knew that you cannot simply return from something enormous and find everything exactly as you left it. That the enormous thing you went on changes the place you came back to, even if only by changing you. Lotho Sackville Baggins, Frodo's unpleasant cousin, was collaborating with Saruman, and Saruman has been taking out his diminishment on the Shire in the small, petty ways available to someone who has lost the capacity for large evil and retained the capacity for small meanness. Cutting trees, closing inns, replacing old good things with new ugly ones, making rules, and generally imposing on the Shire the particular misery of bureaucratic malice. When the four hobbits come back and call the Shire to account, the Shire, which is not as helpless as it looks, hobbits are tough, in the quiet, persistent, roots-deep way that comfortable things are often tough when pushed. The Shire rises, and the occupiers are dealt with, and Saruman, at the last, is confronted. Saruman is killed by Grima, who at the end, after years of servitude and the systematic destruction of everything he was, and could have been, does the one free thing left available to him, which is not a good thing and not a triumphant thing, but is the specific kind of agency that belongs to the cornered. And then Grima is dead too, shot by 3 hobbit arrows before anyone quite decides to, and it is over. It is a small, sad, messy ending for 2 small, sad, messy things, and the story gives it exactly the tone it deserves, which is neither triumphant nor dwelt upon, but simply acknowledged, and then moved past. The Shire recovers. It recovers because it is the Shire, and recovery is what the Shire does, has always done, will always do. The gardens grow back. The trees are replanted with gifts from Galadriel's garden. The earth is healed. The pubs reopen. The post office resumes its irregular but sincere service. And within a generation you would not know from the outside that anything happened. Sam comes home to Bag End. He marries Rosie Cotton, who has been waiting with the specific patience of someone who has decided that a thing worth waiting for is worth waiting for and not making a fuss about in the meantime. They have 13 children, which is a hobbit number, a good round hobbit number, and they are happy with the particular quality of happiness that is not the absence of sorrow, but is the deliberate presence of joy despite it. Sam is mayor of the Shire eventually. He serves 7 terms. He plants trees. He tells his children stories about the far places he went, about the dark mountains and the golden woods and the great cities and the grey sea. And some of them believe all of it, and some of them believe most of it, and all of them sit very still and listen, which is the best thing children can do for someone who has been somewhere and come back. Years later, when Rosie dies, Sam goes to the Grey Havens. He is very old now, Sam, old and ready, and at the harbour Círdan is waiting, as he always waits, because the ship does not leave without the passenger, and the passenger comes when they are ready. And Sam goes over the water and goes to the undying lands, because he too was a ring-bearer, even if only for a little while, even if only for the length of a walk across a Mordor hillside on a cold morning, and that is enough. The distinction of ring-bearer belongs to those who carried it in the name of something larger than themselves, which is both of them, master and gardener, and the sea takes them both in the end, and holds them. Merry and Pippin are buried eventually in Gondor, in the great tomb, in the honored roll of the great. Their ashes go down into the stone of Minas Tirith's hill, into the deep foundation, and if the city stands long enough, you can say their names are literally in the walls of it, which is the kind of thing that would have delighted both of them in different ways. Merry with a quiet satisfaction, and Pippin with enormous enthusiasm for the metaphor. Aragorn dies when he is ready, old and full of years, in the way of kings of his lineage who choose their death when their life is complete. He lies down and does not rise, and Arwen is there, and the city is very quiet, and when he is gone she goes out to the forest, and the story lets her go, gives her the privacy of her grief and her ending, the daughter of Elrond who chose mortality and lives it all the way to the end, faithful and complete. The Red Book survives. The Hobbit story, written by Bilbo and Frodo and Sam, the account of the whole adventure, there and back and further on and all the way into the fire and out the other side, passes down through generations, copied and kept, and the title on the original in a careful hand is the same title it has always been, the one Bilbo gave it first, there and back again. And underneath that in Frodo's handwriting, the Lord of the Rings. The third age ends. The fourth age begins. The elves are gone. Gandalf is gone. The great voices that shaped the story from its deep foundations have departed across the sea. What is left is the world, specifically, this particular corner of the world, the Shire and the plains and the forests and the mountains and the cities, in the hands of men and hobbits, and dwarves building beautiful things in beautiful caves, and the living world going on doing what the living world does, which is to grow toward the light in every direction it can find. And somewhere in the west, beyond the reach of any map, on shores that smell like everything good at once, old friends are sitting together in the evening, and the light is golden, and nobody is in a hurry, and the sea is very blue, and there is more than enough time for everything that still wants to be said. Sleep well. The king has returned. The ring is unmade. The darkness is past. It is morning in the Shire. It is always morning in the Shire.